Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar. It's 7:01. We are waiting for a few more people to join us, so we're gonna hang out for another minute or two, and then we'll begin. So thanks so much for your patience, and we look forward to getting started.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar tonight, titled All Kinds of Time, which we all have, all kinds of kids, and all kinds of activities. We really appreciate you attending this webinar and look forward to your feedback and planning more of these types of activities. A couple of housekeeping notes. I wanted to let everyone know that the handouts for this presentation, we have some charts that we thought would be helpful for everyone attending. And then also any of you that are looking for Act 48 credits, both of those documents are on our handouts tab, which you'll be able to see and access. We are also taping this webinar so that if you have any friends that would like this information, they would be able to access it after the fact. We're actually even considering, because we had so much interest in it, possibly running it another time. So we will keep you posted on that. But with all that said, I wanted to say my name is Lori Watkin, and I am with the TheraPlay family of companies, responsible for community outreach. We also have Lauren Toulin on the line with us, who is responsible for all of the technology for this. And then I am very excited and pleased to announce that we have Sandy Wild Sutton, who will be presenting for us tonight. And Sandy works for TheraPlay, and she started her occupational therapy career in 1987, working in neurorehabilitation with adults, where she specialized in traumatic brain injury. She consulted in pediatrics shortly after, working simultaneously in brain injury while consulting again in pediatrics. She was Developmental Treatment certified in 1989 and gained her therapeutic listening certification in 2010. She comes to us with just a plethora of experience, which has been so helpful to so many of the occupational therapists in our organization and actually outside of the organization. She's worked in rehab, acute care, early intervention, homeschool, and outpatient clinic-based treatment settings. She's currently the Senior Educational Coordinator for the TheraPlay family of companies, and she also serves as a mentor and treating therapist. Throughout her career, Sandy has lectured at state and national levels to a number of audiences, including colleagues, teachers, and parents on development, autism, concussion, executive functioning, orthopedics, sensory processing, vision, and feeding. We are thrilled to be able to have her presenting to you and giving you ideas for what to do at home during the pandemic that we're in right now. So Sandy, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, sounds good. So let's get started. So I just have to do a couple of disclosures. My relevant financial relationship with TheraPlay is that I'm a salaried employee, typically, and that I will reference my place of employment and possibly talk about actual case studies while adhering to the Health Insurance Portability Accountability Act, which is HIPAA, and they have some regulations about how I can talk about children, and I will adhere to them during this presentation. I have no relevant non-financial relationships to disclose to you at this time. So hopefully today, whether you're a parent or a teacher or a neighbor, or babysitter, I'm hoping to give you some components of children's behavior and how they operate from the standpoint of executive functioning and how that impacts play performance. We're going to learn how behavior interventions can support some independent play and learning, and hopefully you'll be able to incorporate some sensory strategies to allow improved interactions with children. The TheraPlay family of companies includes TheraPlay, AOT, Austels, the Children's Therapy Center, Fleming Therapy Services, and Positive Steps. We are located all throughout Pennsylvania and Virginia and Delaware, and also now in New Jersey. We provide physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech, and feeding therapy services, as well as ABA. We have therapists that do early intervention, special instruction services to children in a variety of settings. And like Lori had said, I work in our outpatient centers. I've been there for the last 11 years. But we have therapists that go into children's homes, schools, and daycares. And most recently, now we're doing telehealth. That's a whole new step for us. So we're going to talk about play suggestions in all these different areas and how we can help children improve sensory processing, improve their overall regulation and behavior, look at how executive functioning or those cognitive skills may be impacting their play, and how that you as an adult can facilitate improved play and skills within that executive functioning. And then we're just going to have a whole bunch of play suggestions to make your day a little easier. The first thing that we need to talk about really is our senses and how they're impacted when we talk about sensory integration. We're talking about our senses and how they're really going to interact with our ability to engage with the environment. So I'm going to talk about just a couple different senses here. Of course, we know the 5 that we all learned while we were in elementary school: the tactile, vision, auditory, taste, and smell. There's actually 3 others. 2 are listed on this slide, but the third one we'll talk about a little bit as well. Proprioception, the top one on the slide, is the information that you get from your muscles and joints. This is a highly organizing sensory system, and we use this sensory system frequently to help kids gain what we call regulation, and I'll talk about that a little bit more as we get going. And then the vestibular system is located in our inner ear. We have 3 semicircular canals inside our ear, and there's fluid that moves through those semicircular canals every time we move our head and change the position of our head. And there are little hair-like follicles that, as the fluid moves past those hair-like follicles, that vestibular system lets us know where our body is in space. And again, that vestibular system gives us a lot of information to help us stay organized. And then there's another sense that we're just starting to talk about is occupational therapists, and that's called interoception. And interoception is important because that is the sense that tells us whether we're hungry, whether we're sleepy, whether our belly hurts. It helps us understand pain within our body. And so we're finding that this interoception sense is also super important for kids to have awareness of what's going on with their body and how that's impacting their regulation. Now, when we talk about the sensory systems, every child is a different puzzle that we bring to the table. Some children can be over-responsive, and that means they're going to avoid input. Some children are under-responsive, and that means they're going to look for input. So if I'm looking at that proprioceptive system, the child who's under-responsive doesn't want to be near other children because they're afraid if they get too close, they don't know how to handle that information. The under-responsive kid is actually the opposite kid. They are like a bull in a china shop. They are hugging their friends and knocking them over because they need more and more and more input in order to understand where their body is and what's going on. And then we have a third thing going on, and that's the child that's just seeking that information. And so they're the child who constantly wants hugs, or is, the kids who are swinging from the chandelier. They're usually our seekers, and they like to do a lot of bumping and crashing. So sensory integration really impacts our development and our learning. Both the body and the brain must be able to detect information and perceive it from the environment. So it's a little bit like a computer. What I put into the computer is very important because the computer then takes the information, interprets it, and then gives me an answer back out. So if I want to spell the word play, and I type in Tyal, I can't expect to get the word play to show up on my monitor because I've inputted the wrong information. And the same thing is very true of the sensory system. If the child is underreactive and they're not getting enough of that input, then they're not going to have the behavior reaction that we're expecting from them because they're not getting the right sensory input in order to give you the right behavior response. So these kids, all kids everywhere, have all different kinds of sensory systems. My own personal sensory system. I was a kid who loved to hug other kids, and I'm still somebody who has a hard time knowing where my body's space. So I bump into things. But certainly as an adult, I've got here, and I can take information from my other sensory systems. So whenever you're thinking about kids, we want to think about how do we make sure we meet their sensory needs. And we don't want to meet their sensory needs after they've melted down, but we want to anticipate the situations that are going to be difficult for them and try to anticipate those sensory needs and give them sensory experiences before. So OTs like to call that a sensory diet, and that's really having a routine throughout the day where you're getting different kinds of sensory experiences. So playing outside can be a sensory experience. Playing in dirt can be a sensory experience. And we use these sensory experiences to help us perform better in activities and decrease frustration, to decrease anxiety throughout our day, and like I said, decrease that frustration within a task. So that proprioceptive system is activated whenever we do something called heavy work. So occupational therapists frequently talk about heavy work when they want to activate that proprioceptive system. And all of us really, as adults, use our proprioceptive system without even thinking about it. So if I have an argument with my husband, frequently what I might do is the dishes or scrub the floor or vacuum or do something to kind of make my area more organized. But in doing that, I'm giving myself heavy work. I'm activating that proprioceptive input or giving information to my muscles and joints so that I can be more organized. And whenever in doubt, no matter what is happening with the child, proprioception is always the best system to try to activate and get kids more organized. So we can do heavy work by pushing and pulling large objects. That gives us lots of great feedback. By building obstacle courses so kids can walk and climb and jump. And it also helps them sequence and motor plan. Things like riding a bicycle or scooters are a great way to get that heavy work or that proprioceptive input. Going for a walk is a great way to get it. Digging in the garden, in the sandbox, playing with resistive toys such as Play-Doh and Legos. And for those children who are really very underreactive, this might not be enough, just so you know. Again, it's like a puzzle. So we have to figure out, is this enough, or do I need more of this proprioceptive heavy work to help my child feel more regulated? Again, we'll talk about what regulation is in a minute. Making cookies is a great heavy work activity. Helping with chores, pillow fights, building a pillow or a blanket for pushing and pulling your siblings in a wagon, roller skating, especially if you're going to do it uphill, any kind of yard work, yoga, chin-ups, pull-ups, all those kinds of things are heavy work activities. Now, the other system that's really important to help kids get regulated. So let's talk about what is regulation. Regulation is that just right point in your day or in your sensory system so that you can think and play in an organized fashion. You're not going to get upset. You're not going to be too tired. So in the morning, if you need a cup of coffee to kind of get you going, your regulation is a little bit low. But if you're zooming around and maybe you're worried, like if I were anxious to do this webinar, maybe I was had a lot of anxiety prior to getting onto the webinar with you guys, and that actually is a higher regulatory state. And so we want to be somewhere in the middle so that we're just right for kids. So the tactile system, especially for kids who are what we call low engagement kids, they really struggle to play. They don't give a lot of eye contact. Kids who don't have great communication and don't have that back and forth with you do really well with gaining some tactile play. And when we talk about tactile play, there's all kinds of opportunities. For kids who have trouble with tactile play, we want to start in dry mediums. So here I have corn, I have fish rocks, dirt and sand outside. They're all more what we call dry tactile medium. I put my hands in, I take my hands out, there's nothing left on my hands when I'm finished. Then we start to move towards wet, and you see that we have the water beads. The water beads are nice too because they're the next step. So I put my hands in and I can take them out. I don't have any water beads left on my hand, but if you've ever played with water beads, you still kind of have like a residual feeling on. So I don't have wet that I need to get off, but I do have like a residual feeling after I've taken my hand out of that water bead. And then the next step is something like lotion or paint. So I literally have to go to the sink and wash that off. So it's much harder to play in that, but when you see kids go through this progression, they get that tactile play. And when we put that proprioceptive system and that tactile system together, we call it the somatosensory system. And that somatosensory system is so important for kids to gain that regulation. And so these kinds of activities, if you're really struggling in your day with your kids, are great kinds of activities to build into your day because it's going to help your child feel a little bit more organized about their day. So let's talk a little bit about whether your child has sensory needs or behavior needs. And when we talk about sensory versus behavior, sometimes we have sensory-based outbursts and sometimes kids are having tantrums. And really the way to tell the difference between the two is a sensory-based is they're being overridden by those sensory input, and they really can't make a conscious choice. Kids who are having a tantrum are making a conscious choice. You have offered them cereal for breakfast and they want candy, and they have chosen that they're going to melt down because they're not going to get the candy for breakfast. Where the sensory-based child maybe is melting down because the smell of the cereal is too overwhelming for them and they can't handle that. So in those sensory-based kids, they're feeling overwhelmed and out of control. Tantrums are very strategic and manipulative. I'm going to melt down and throw myself on the floor so that my mom will give me candy for breakfast, okay? A sensory-based child, you cannot reason with them. A tantrum child, you can reason with them. A child who is having a sensory outburst is not capable of making choices. A child with tantrums is able to make choices. So if you say, first you need to eat your cereal, and then at 11 o'clock before lunch, I'll give you a piece of candy. Okay, I'll eat my cereal. That's a tantrum. A sensory outburst is really not easily controlled by an adult. And that's why when we talk about a sensory diet, we want to provide that proprioceptive and that tactile input throughout a child's day so that we don't melt down and then try to regain what's going on, because it's much harder once a child has had a sensory outburst to get them back to where they need to be than it is to give them those sensory opportunities throughout the day so that they don't end up having a sensory outburst. Tantrums, children's emotions are under their conscious control, okay? Sensory outbursts may last a long time. Tantrums can too, but they generally stop. It's like a light switch, and as soon as, if you gave that child that piece of candy, that tantrum would stop immediately. That's not the case in a sensory-based outburst. Tantrums stop when nobody's watching. If you walk away from that child and let them tantrum in the kitchen all by themselves, they're probably going to get up and come and find you, because the whole point of a tantrum is to have an audience. And like I said, a tantrum is very much like a light switch. Now, what becomes hard is some kids they're right in the middle. They're teetering. They start out to have a tantrum, but then they become overwhelmed, and it is sensory-based. But generally, this helps you outline the difference between the two. So there's always that question, is it sensory or is it behavior? And we know that all children make the most improvement when sensory and behavior issues are considered together. Challenging behavior should not be excused, even if sensory issues cause them. I'm sorry, I'm on my phone and somebody's calling me. So that's that background noise. So I apologize. Hopefully they'll finish pretty quickly. So a lot of people always say, oh, my child is tantruming or not tantruming, but they're melting down because of their sensory behaviors. So I'm not going to discipline them. Actually, children should still be held accountable, even if they have sensory needs. We need to help them get those sensory needs met, but we also need to let them know what the expectations are. So we talked about regulation just a little bit already. Self-regulation involves that ability to monitor and control your feelings, your emotions, and your behavior. So I had talked about you need to be just right in order to be able to do that. If you're worried and anxious about something, it's much harder to regulate your emotions and your feelings, and then sometimes your behavior changes because of those feelings and emotions. Regulation is also the ability to block out irrelevant stimuli and control your impulses that allow us to persist in tasks. And we know a lot of kids today really struggle with controlling their impulses. They see that piece of candy, they want it right now, and that's very impulsive. Or, something is going on in the room. If somebody else has the TV, they can't block out that TV. It's very hard for them. And so regulation can be impacted by the environment, and it can be impacted by you as an adult as well. So we're really looking for that just state for learning and just right state for learning and playing. Regulation allows us to sit and attend without too much energy or being too tired, and it allows us to engage in tasks and with people all around us. So when we're looking at kids who are tantruming and we don't believe that it's sensory, we need to look at what is the function of the behavior. Does your child want to attain something? No, they may want to attain your attention. And that's really hard in this COVID virus because maybe you're working all day and it's hard for you to give them attention. But that's something that you need to be aware of, is that the behavior may be for your attention. Maybe they want an item or an activity, or they're trying to look for some kind of self-stimulation. Maybe they're trying to avoid something. Frequently, we see behavior when demands are too hard, when you've asked them to do something that is too difficult. And a perfect example of that is when my kids were little, they used to go in the basement and play together. And if I had something to do, like let's say I was working on a child's paperwork at home and I asked them to play independently by themselves, I would come down to the basement and every toy would be out on the floor. And I'd say, okay, guys, we need to clean up. And ultimately they go, no, I can't clean up, it's hard. Well, the task, they're trying to avoid the task in cleaning up. And one of the reasons they might be avoiding that task could be that the task is too difficult. And when I say cleaning up is too difficult, it's not that they can't pick up the toy and put it away. It's now that all the toys are all over and now it's overwhelming. They can't organize that task. But when I say, okay, you put away the Barbies, you put away the Barbie clothes, and you put away all the Nerf guns. Now each child has a task and I've organized it for them so that they can initiate that cleanup and become involved in the cleanup task. So when we're looking at behavior, we want to see what the function of that behavior is. We want to consider both sensory and behavioral reasons. Maybe they have a communication issue. Maybe that's what the behavior is from this. They just can't communicate what they need to tell you. Or maybe that behavior is arising from some kind of overload within their sensory system. So we want to be able to support our children when they're involved in a task and when they're showing behavior. Sometimes we can make the task shorter. All right, you need to do 2 more homework problems and then you're done. Maybe we need to chunk the task. All right, you're going to do, let me think of an example of chunking the task. I'll get back to that one in a second. Put limits on the task. All right, you're going to do all the even-numbered math problems. You're going to make the steps more explicit and help scaffold and build on those skills. And you're going to work with close-ended tasks first and then move to open-ended tasks. So example of a close-ended task is putting a puzzle together. A close-ended task is finished. It's obvious when the task is finished. The end of a math homework worksheet. It's obvious when you get to the done. That's close-ended. Open-ended, it could be reading a book. A 300-page book could be open-ended because 300 pages is very far away. So that seems like an open-ended task to me right now. And then to allow choices in the task. So if we're practicing coloring, maybe I'll say, you color this, and then I'm going to color that. Now it's your turn to color, now it's my turn to color. That breaks down the task a little bit easier for the child so that they have a much easier time. So let's get back to chunking. So one of the things you can do to chunk tasks is to help a child. So if we're going to tie our shoes, maybe they know how to tie the first 2 steps. We frequently break shoe tying down into 7 steps. First, you make an X. That's the first step with the laces. Then you take one lace and you put it under the other lace. Then you pull it tight. So they're the first 3 steps. If a child's successful in those first 3 steps, we chunk those first 3 steps together before we add the 4th step that might be difficult for them. So that's an example of chunking a task so that the child can have lots of successful experience before they have to do the hard piece. So then you say, okay, so you've given me all these great things to do. I can, try to organize my day to help my child get some heavy work through the day. I can get them some tactile experiences to help them regulate. I can try to, make sure that I'm looking at their behavior and looking at what the reasons are within their behavior. But for whatever reason, my child is still melting down. What do I do then? So a couple of things that you can do when your child does have big outbursts that seem to be sensory related is create a womb space area. So some kids create their own womb space. They'll go underneath the dining room table, and it's a nice little calm, enclosed area that nobody else goes to. Some people create like a little tent in a child's room or in the play area so they can kind of go there. So that womb space is a place that's set up that might be able to give them some proprioceptive input. So if I had a little tent, I might put a blanket in there or a sleeping bag or maybe some pillows so I can kind of smush myself into that area and get some input. And it's a quieter area. It might, the lights might be dimmed to that area. It's a place where I can go and kind of get myself together. Deep hugs are frequently really organizing for kids. And kids may know that they need that from you and say, can I have a hug? And so those big, long squeezes are really helpful. Sometimes the only thing to do when kids are really melting down into the sensory is that time away. So I hate to call it a timeout, but essentially a timeout and time away is basically the same thing, only you're not doing it because the child was bad. You're trying to teach the child that they need some time to get themselves together. So you can say, I can see you need some time to get together. Why don't you go play some music in your room? Or if reading books for some kids is really helpful. Why don't you go read your book for 10 minutes and then come back and we'll try again. Know that you are an agent in their sensory system. So things that you could do are use a calming voice. One example of this is I had a little boy who had been in second grade, and he had seen me up until the time that he was 5 and got discharged. He was doing really great, and he was really having a hard time in second grade, and they just couldn't figure out what it was. So he actually said to Mom, I have to go back and see Miss Sandy. So, a couple sessions went by, and I thought, things are going great. I don't know what is going on in second grade. Then he had come into the session, and Mom and I were talking for a few minutes, and he hid from me. And I started looking for him, and I'm calling out, and let's say his name is Thomas. Thomas, where are you? Thomas, where are you? 5 minutes go by, and no Thomas. He doesn't answer me. Now, I, as a therapist, am in a panic. Where did this child go? Did he go out the back door? I can't find him anywhere. Another 5 minutes go by. I finally find him. He's hiding behind the door and being as quiet as he can. And I lost it, more like a parent than a therapist. And Thomas, what are you doing? You can't hide from me. And all of a sudden, he started kicking and hitting and, really fell apart. And I thought, now I know what's wrong in second grade. Somebody must be using a really escalated voice, and he doesn't know how to react to this. I changed my voice. Thomas, it's okay. I gave him a big hug. It's all right. I just can't have you hide from me. Miss Sandy was so worried about where you were. So changing my level of escalation helped him de-escalate. And then I was able to, talk to the parent, and, the parent was mortified that he kicked and hit me, but I said, it's really good that it happened, because now I know what's setting him off, what's happening. He's not used to somebody that yells at him, because that's not how you approach him, and that's not how other people that he's ever dealt with have approached him. So if he has a teacher that's a little bit more yelling, he's reacting in more of a fight or flight kind of reaction. Another thing that can help kids de-escalate and calm is lights out. Especially in school environments, we have a lot of those fluorescent lights, and the buzzing can really be difficult for children. Tactile play can sometimes be really helpful, and that heavy work activity, so that proprioceptive input. So let's talk about executive functioning just a little bit. So executive functioning is a set of skills to manage tasks that we complete every day. Executive functioning determines what we pay attention to and what we choose to do and what we choose not to do. It allows us to manage our emotions and thoughts so that we can be efficient. So we need executive functioning for regulation, okay? So if we have some of our executive functioning skills that aren't working really well, then we might have some difficulty with regulation as well. And it regulates the behaviors when difficulties arise within a task or situation. It helps us from not getting frustrated, and it assists in our ability to function with independence. So let's talk about what are executive functioning skills. So I started off with the hardest one, which is hard to understand, but something called metacognition. And metacognition allows you to understand what you're good at and what you need help with. So if a child doesn't have a good sense of what they're good at and what they need help with, they get frustrated because they keep working on something. Or they might not recognize. Metacognition also helps you like check your math homework and see where the errors are. But if I don't have a sense that I have any difficulty with social skills, then I don't see a need to work on social skills. And so that is metacognition. It's understanding yourself a little bit and to know what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. A way to work on metacognition is to help your child make predictions, to evaluate what might happen in a task, create checklists to self-evaluate performance. So as an occupational therapist, frequently when I ask kids to do a writing test for me, I'll make a checklist and I say, okay, first thing we're going to check is whether you left a left-hand margin. Then I'm going to check and see if you left a right-hand margin. Then I'm going to see if you put all your letters on the baseline correctly. Then I'm going to look at whether you have spaces between each word. And then I'm going to make sure that all the words have teeny tiny spaces. Each letter has a teeny tiny space between each letter and not a big space in the middle of the word. Now I make that checklist so that child in the beginning of the writing task has the opportunity to look at all the things that they need to keep track of in their head. And then they can go and look themselves and say, did I leave a left margin? Yep, I did. Did I leave a right margin? Yes, I did. Was I able to keep all my letters on the baseline? Yes, I did. Did I leave a space between every word? Oh, I forgot one right here. So it helps kids start to recognize their own errors so that they can make better choices down the road. The next part of executive functioning is something called working memory. Working memory is really important for schoolwork, but it's important for every part of our task, everyday engagement tasks. So if you tell your child in the morning, go get ready for school, which is not what they're doing right now, but they need to go get ready for school. You expect them to get dressed, maybe they have to make their bed, brush their teeth, brush their hair, get their backpack ready, and come on downstairs for breakfast. But if they have issues with working memory, then they might not remember what you even told them to do at the beginning. So they get up to the room and they're like, I'm not really sure what I was supposed to do, so I'm going to play Legos instead. And then as a parent, you're getting really frustrated because you tell them a million times to do something. But really, it's an issue with memory. And so little things like putting a checklist out to help them with the tasks that you've asked them to do can be very helpful for a child with working memory difficulty. But there's lots of things that you can do to help your child build those memory skills. So games with any kind of patterns, sequences. The old memory game, you can, if you don't have a memory game, you can get a deck of cards. Put 8 pairs of cards, put them all face down and try to find the matches. The game of war, Old Maid, Go Fish, what I want to pack in my suitcase. That's I'm going on a vacation and I'm going to pack a shirt. And then your child says, I'm going on a vacation, I'm going to pack a shirt and pants. And then you would say, I'm going on a vacation, I'm going to pack a shirt, pants, and sunglasses. And then you keep going until somebody forgets what's on that list. 20 questions is a great game. I'm thinking of a movie. Your kids go, is it a drama? Is it a, whatever? And you ask 20 questions to see if they can guess what that movie is. The game Sequence for kids. The old telephone game, Whispering Down the Lane. Reversing roles and let your child teach you how to do something is a great way to help them with working memory. And then another way is to break down the steps of tasks, and OTs call that task analysis. So if I can't remember how to brush all the steps in brushing my teeth, maybe I'm going to break it down into a checklist or a picture list of all the different steps that go into take the lid off, squirt the toothpaste on, put the lid back on, brush my teeth, spit into the sink, and get those steps down. Executive functioning also has to do with planning and time management. So if your child has a trouble with the plan and understanding how much time something is going to take, then they may have trouble with time management and planning, and this could be impacting their ability to be successful. So if a child is able to write, encourage them to write down their plan, including all the steps. Identify priorities of the task. Encourage the use of schedules. Use timers when needed. And games that work on planning for older kids, Locus, charades is a great way to work on planning, Scrabble, Jenga, Animal Logic, Quiddler, chess and checkers, and then games that work on time management include things like Boggle and Pictionary. So organization. So when I gave that example of my kids cleaning up the basement, part of the problem is they didn't know how to organize the task. So maybe they need to make a list of the tools that they need. Maybe you need to work on keeping the area clutter-free. Or maybe they need support to organize them. Like I gave my kids the support. You put away the dolls, you put away the outfits, you put away the Nerf guns. That helps organize the task for them so that they can be more helpful in participating in that task. Another part of executive functioning is something called initiation. Kids who have trouble initiation often look lazy because they struggle to initiate and get that task started. And they often are pulled into another task very easily. So if they're writing a report on the computer and something pops up, they go right to the pop-up and then they stop working on the task. So not only initiating a task, but then sustaining participation. And a great way to help kids with initiation is to set a goal, create a plan, ensure that your child understands the demands of the task. So I might say to a child, okay, Miss Sandy is going to go get the crayons. You are supposed to sit at the table. What are you going to do? You're going to sit at the table. What is Miss Sandy going to do? She's going to get the crayons. So I make sure that the child understands that what I'm expecting of him is to sit at the table and not follow me to the crayons. And then another part of executive functioning that's super important and difficult for children is flexibility. And when children have trouble with flexibility, you want to provide them with more structure. Flexibility is enhanced by playing games where you have to take a turn. Flexibility is enhanced by talking about not always winning and that sometimes you lose, but it's still fun to play the game, and that the purpose of the game is not to win, but to have a good time playing with your friends. Kids who struggle with flexibility need to be first in line or always need to win. They really struggle with that. So practicing that turn taking for games like Candyland, Chutes and Ladders, even card games are really great. And then the other thing to do is create a plan A and a plan B. So mommy has to work for an hour and then I'm going to play with you is plan A. But plan B might be that mommy's going to get done early and I'll be able to play with you sooner. So you set a timer for an hour and create the plan A that mommy's not going to be available for an hour and we want you to play by yourself. But plan B is my phone call or whatever I'm doing might get done early and I'm going to try to play with you earlier. Plan A and plan B can also be grandmom's going to pick you up from the game. Plan B is if mommy gets off from work soon enough, I'll pick you up. So the child has two plans in their head so that they can build that flexibility of two different things happening. Problem solving is another thing that kids frequently have difficulty with, and this is an executive functioning skill. And frequently, as parents and teachers, we give children the solution right away. So a way to work on that problem solving is instead of telling your child the answer, is giving them some leading questions to find the answer to problem solve themselves. So if they've put their shirt on inside out or the sleeve is stuck and they keep trying to put it on, you could say, something isn't right. What do you think it is? Is it something with the sleeve? You're right, the sleeve's tangled. Do you know how to untangle it? Do you need help? I think if you put your hand in and pull it out, it might work. Good job. Now try to put on your shirt. So I'm not giving him every answer. I'm trying to lead him down the path to help him or her find the answer themselves. So like I said, executive functioning has to do with your cognitive performance. And when children are having difficulty with a task, again, same thing when we talked about regulation, we want to do the same thing for executive functioning. We want to look at the activity demands. How did I give the directions? Did I give the directions so the child can understand them? How much structure did I give? How many steps did I just ask them to do? Was the level of the activity in the room very busy, or was it quiet? How many visual and auditory distractions were involved while they were doing the task? And how is the presence of others impacting their performance? So when we think of executive functioning, there are two types of skills. The thinking skills, which are the cognition, the planning, the organizing, time management, working memory, and then metacognition, and the doing, which is the behavior, the response, inhibition, emotional control, sustained attention, the ability to initiate the task, and their flexibility within the task. So those are all the things that are going to impact your child's behavior. Again, other things that can work on those executive functioning skills, craft activities are awesome. If you have a picture of the craft that you want to complete and you give them all the materials, can they plan and organize and make the craft look just like yours or like the picture? Do they lose pieces under the table? Do they cut it in half instead of cutting a circle when they need to? Do they not recognize the eyes and where they go on the craft? That's all planning and organizing, but it also has to do with body awareness. And so crafts are great activities to build those executive functioning skills. Morning routines. So building that morning routine and giving your child more independence toward getting the entire routine completed. Like I said, cleanup is a great one. Have your child plan the next play date. What do they need to do in order to get the friend over? Let's see. We need to find Billy's phone number. We need to call his mommy. Maybe they can try to use your phone and call mommy if they're old enough to see if Billy can come over to play. So that organizing and planning what a play date would look like is a great way to build your child's executive functioning skills. If your child's a little older, ordering takeout is another great. Where are you going to get the pizza? How far away from your house is it? Do they deliver? How long is it going to take? Are we still going to order the pizza from that pizza shop if it's a 3-hour wait? There are a lot of skills that go into that. Planning a menu for dinner. It could be for your dinner tonight or a party that's coming up on the weekend. I know we don't have that many parties right now, but that's a great way to build those executive functioning skills. Like I said before, creating and following a schedule builds those skills. Practicing origami is a great way for older kids to build those executive functioning skills. Scavenger hunts, how to find a list of activities. We got a plan. What rooms would we most likely find those items within the scavenger hunt? Where in the house is it most likely that I would find this item? So it takes a lot of planning and organizing and building it and putting together something using directions. And then I have a whole list of games that are available that also build those executive functioning skills. Gross motor play suggestions that help your children build skills. Ball games with catching, throwing, bouncing, and kicking that works on coordination, but it also works on planning and organization. Animal walks or wheelbarrow. When I talk about animal walks, I mean like your child walks like a bear, or they're going to get on their hands and knees and walk like a doggy, so that they're actually physically trying to look like that animal, or you pick up their feet and they're the wheelbarrow, you're the farmer. So these gross motor play suggestions are also great heavy work activities that we talked about for regulation. Yoga is a great way to build gross motor skills, but again, it's a great way for a child to start to understand their ability to self-regulate. Yoga is a great activity to help children get themselves organized. Riding tricycles and scooters build coordination and gross motor skills, but it's also a great regulation activity or a sensory task. Jumping, playing hopscotch, again, I'm getting lots of input to my proprioceptive system, but it's also going to build gross motor play. And then anything where we're doing movement through space, gymnastic type play, including upside down, rolling swings. If you live on a hill, rolling down the hill, climbing back up, it's a great way to build gross motor skills, but it is also a fantastic way to work on regulation and get that proprioceptive. And if you're rolling down a hill, you're going to get that vestibular input too, which is awesome. Building fine motor skills. Scissor skills are a great activity at any age to work on what we call bilateral coordination. That's one hand doing something while the other hand is doing something else. And you can do things like cut newspaper, coupons, pictures. And the pictures, they're actually water bottles. And what somebody did is we cut the water bottle up and then colored all the water bottles. So that's a great activity. And you could make that maybe for your deck or your porch and watch it blow in the wind. It's a great fun activity to, practice cutting skills, get lots of input from the plastic bottle, but also an activity for kids to enjoy and have fun. Pizza making is a great activity because you work on all different kinds of muscles in your hand. You work on planning and organization. So it also, not only does it work on fine motor, but it works on those executive functioning. Building blocks is such a great skill for kids because it helps them understand hand-eye coordination. It helps them use the side of their hand with the thumb and index finger instead of the other side of their hand. So that's building more mature grasping skills that we'll need for writing. Things like Q-tip art are a great way to build fine motor skills. Using push pins. I'll print out a picture of their favorite thing, and instead of coloring the picture, we'll outline it using push pins into like a cork board. And when we're done, we can put it up to the light and see the design through the light. Learning sign language is a great way to build fine motor skills, isolate fingers, and build hand strength. Chalking on the driveway whenever we have a nice day, although I hear the next couple of days are going to be rain. And puzzles are fantastic, not only to build fine motor skills, but also visual motor skills. Playing with Play-Doh, rolling the Play-Doh out, cutting the Play-Doh, using cookie cutters with it, following cars along a path, stenciling to help with visual boundaries and motor development, and then vary writing tools so that the kids and what they're writing on so that they have a different amount of drag while they're working. Playing with tongs is absolutely great, and if you've ever been to P.F. Chang's, they have, instead of chopsticks for kids, they have a set of tongs that are fantastic for little hands, and they're great to pick up all kinds of things. And you could do like pom-poms in an ice cube tray if you have an old ice cube tray, picking up dirty clothes and putting in the laundry basket with tongs, going on a toy scavenger hunt, cleaning up bath toys with tongs, stocking blocks with tongs. And then on the left-hand side, I have a whole bunch of games that use tongs, and they're great for developing skills, not only for scissor skills, but to develop grasp skills for writing. And then, of course, you want to develop your children's play and language skills as well. Things like gestural songs like Wheels on the Bus. Anytime you can do Where is Thumbkin. Those are great not only for your fine motor skills, but for building language skills. Looking at picture books and sharing that time with your child if you can, and interacting about what's on the picture. And here you can use some prediction. What do you think is going to happen in the story to work on planning and organizing and develop those pre-reading skills. Puzzles are a great way to build language skills as well. Make believe and dress up and help your child develop those skills by playing and dressing up with them if you can, because that's going to help them build those skills. And simple listening and imitation games like Simon Says and Follow the Leader are great. So being successful at home, you have to think about so many things. I mean, I could have done in a webinar in each of those areas for you, and I put a lot of information into one. So basically, you want to look at, is the environment right? Have I set up my child for success? Or is the environment too busy? Is there too much going on? Did I ask them to do their homework at the kitchen table while their brother's watching TV and the dog's barking to go out? Is my child regulated? Are they too tired? Do I need to perk them up? Maybe they need to run around and jump before they get started if they're too tired, or maybe they need to participate in some of that heavy work before they get started. So where are they on that regulation curve so that they can be successful? Have they developed the executive functioning skills to be successful in what you're asking them to do? Or do you need to grade that task for them a little bit and help them plan and organize so that they can be more successful? A big one, does your child understand the demands that you've asked them? I think as adults, frequently, we just assume kids understand what the demands are. And so many times today with kids who have autism or ADHD, they don't understand the demands. And so by being more implicit with what I'm asking them to do, and then positively reinforcing them when they do exactly what I've asked them to do. Great job going upstairs and getting dressed. I am so proud of you for following mommy's directions. That's exactly what I wanted you to do. That is a great way for kids to get the feedback and to get your positive attention. And if they got upstairs and they forgot what they were supposed to do, you could say, I'm so glad you got upstairs, but what were we supposed to do again? Getting dressed. Great job. Getting dressed. That's exactly what we're supposed to do, so that you can give kids understanding of what the demands are. And then really, do they need my attention? And at different age levels, you're going to have kids needing different amounts of attention. Certainly a child who's 2 needs a lot more attention than a child who's 4. And so, like I said, ramping up that positive attention helps so that you don't have negative attention down the road. Other things that you always want to consider is your child using their strongest sensory system to learn new skills? Like I said before, I bump into things and I don't have a good sense of where my body is in space. However, it is a strong system for me to learn. When I was in occupational therapy school learning anatomy, I frequently moved my arms and legs to figure out what the muscles did. And it was a great way for me to learn. And many kids need their proprioceptive system while they're learning. So if you have a child who's up and moving in order to learn, they may need that up and learning. A lot of kids have a harder time sitting and learning. And so giving them opportunities to be up and moving while they learn is a great thing. Are you providing input to best support their learning? If you're giving them input and walking away and then there's left and they don't know how to initiate the task, you might not be able to support their learning the best way. But if you sit, wait, let them initiate the task, you give them examples of how to do it, they do one, then you walk away. Now you know your child's ready to engage and be able to participate, let's say, in their math worksheet. And what level of effort goes into learning? This really hit home for me. I have 3 children, and my oldest actually has a learning disability. And we would spend hours in first grade, second grade, kindergarten doing homework. And I thought, wow, this teacher just gives so much homework. And other parents are like, no, she doesn't. I'm like, no, my child has homework. Like, we spend an hour doing homework in kindergarten. And then my second child came home and I'd be, where's your homework? She'd go, oh, I did it on the bus. So, they were both really smart kids, but they needed different environments to learn, and they just both needed a different level of effort to get that learning done. And so knowing the kind of effort that goes into your child's learning is important. And then you can set limits so that they can be more successful. And can they learn better using another sensory system? Like I said, many kids need that proprioceptive system or need to be up and moving. So I talked a lot about setting up the environment. So look at that room. That's not my house. I found it online. But that is an example of my basement when I talked about my kids saying, we can't clean up. I mean, look at that mess. Where do you even start? But if I say, okay, you try to pick up all the Legos, you try to pick up all the paper, and that is a way to start getting the environment where we need to be. When you want children to independently play, keep the play area organized. Ensure that your child has the appropriate regulation for either indoor or outdoor play. Try to have them play with one set of toys at a time and not get lots of things out at once. And set up the expectations for what you expect them to do within that independent play. For schoolwork, make sure you sit at a table that provides optimal positioning. So unfortunately, we're at home. Our younger children you may not have a table for them that, where their feet touch the ground. But think about, sitting on something really high and not having that base of support. So maybe put something under their feet if they're sitting at the kitchen table to do their homework. Try to limit the distractions. Turn off the television set. Make sure your neighbor's not, mowing the lawn today if you're expecting them to concentrate. Again, I said set up those expectations. How much time do you want them to work? What is the expected quality? How much do you expect them to get done? Provide checklists or a visual schedule. Have tools for the task at the table, and provide a sample whenever you can. Now, we gave you Act 48, so if you're looking to get that 48, those handouts can be found at the bottom of the little box screen. There's a word that says handouts too, and the Act 48 professional development attendance form is right there. We also have developmental charts to help you know which developmental skills kids should have when. If you could have those Act 48 forms back to me by April 30th, I'm hopeful that we are going back to work full-time sometime in May, and then I will get everything into the PERM system for you to earn Act 48. I will also get everybody a certificate of attendance that would like one. So if you're not earning Act 48, but it would be beneficial for you if you're coming from Virginia or Delaware, and you would like a certificate of attendance, please email me at ssutton@theraplayinc.com, and I can get you a certificate of attendance as well. And like I said, I don't know when we'll reopen. I'm hopeful sometime in the middle of May, but if you get them all to me by April 30th, then I know where to look for them in my emails. Now, if you have any questions, Lauren is going to help me out with that. You can go ahead and type them in to your chat box. And then even if you have any ideas for us or general suggestions for future presentations, specific strategies that can be given without us doing a full evaluation. Also know if you feel that your child is really struggling in some of these areas, we can do a screening or an evaluation. You can, when we're back, you can come to us at any of the offices at TheraPlay, Positive Steps, Center, Children's Therapy Center, and Fleming Therapy. So all of those places are our outpatient centers, and we can work on giving you a screening evaluation if you have concerns. And then also, if you have concerns, talk to your pediatrician, because that's a great place to start about where your concerns lie. Maybe your expectations are too high, and talking to your pediatrician might help you out with that. We are providing telehealth services right now for some insurances in physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy. If you're interested in telehealth, you can email any of the addresses below, and we can make sure that we get you on our telehealth. These are references and websites that you can go to for more information. And like I said at the end, these are our information on where kids' skills should be at what ages. So Lauren, do you have any questions for us at this point?
None at this point. If anyone has any questions and you want to send them through the chat or the questions tab.
And as I would like, this is Lori jumping in, I would like to remind
Okay, great.
that we are videotaping this. So if you have anyone, any friends, colleagues that you think would benefit from this information, they can certainly reach out to us, and we can make sure that they have a copy of this presentation. But if there's no questions at this point, I really want to say thank you to everyone that attended tonight. We'd love to hear your ideas on future topics for webinars. And I want to say personally thank you to Sandy again for providing this hugely valuable information for all of us. Your wealth of information or experience as not only a professional occupational therapist, but also as a parent is so valuable to all of us. I would like to say thank you to Lauren Tulin for making this whole presentation possible for us. And then lastly, I want to say thank you so much to everyone that attended. We know these are just trying times for all of us, and we truly want to make sure that you all stay safe and healthy through this pandemic. Our thoughts are with all of you, our employees, our patients, our families, and everyone. We want you to please take care, and again, reach out to us for other topics that we can potentially help you with. So have a great night. Thank you. We look forward to reaching out to you in the near future. Take care.